What is up, guys? I tried filming this video. Let me shift this over a little bit. There we go. So I tried filming this video using my mobile phone, but because I went over the recording limit, it split into 2 files, and I tried to edit it in my preferred editing software. Didn't work. Didn't feel like downloading an app to do it. So I'm just going to remake the video using my camcorder. And this is nice as well because I can show stuff on the cube that I tried to with the mobile. I'll be able to show that stuff better with this, I think. It won't be perfect, but I think it's fine. Anyways, I'm finally going to be talking about the Mehta method for solving the 3x3. And this was proposed by Mehta in around August of 2020. This is the earliest documentation that I was able to find online. I do believe he emailed me about it maybe like a month prior, but I didn't end up giving him feedback. For reasons that I'll get to in a moment. So first thing I want to talk about is just a bit about myself, kind of a disclaimer for anyone who wants to ask me about Nautilus or LEOR, whatever it's called, just other new methods. I'm going to basically explain why I'm probably not interested in them, unless you can give me a good argument. So what I'm interested in, me personally as a cuber, event-wise, 3x3 two-handed. Why do I care about this event more than clock or 3x3 one-handed? Well, I believe that, well, I know for a fact actually that with the WCA it is the flagship event. It is the event with the most popularity, the event with the most prestige. The same is true for Red Bull competitions, and the same will be true for any speedcubing organization that runs competitions that will come about in the future. So that's why I care about 3x3 two-handed the most. It is also the event that I just personally find the most interesting. So when I'm talking about methods in general, I only really care about its potential relating to the 3x3 two-handed event. So that's thing number one, and then thing number two with methods is, by extension, when it comes to new methods that come out, I'm only really interested in methods that I think have the potential to be on the same level as CFOP and RU, which to this day, out of all of the methods that have come and gone, those are the only two methods that we have really seen do anything exceptional at the highest level. CFOP obviously kind of being the dominant force, and RU having notable showings with Alexander Lau in the past, and also Sean from the Philippines at the last World Championship getting second place. And also getting a sub-6 average, which is, obviously phenomenal. So those are the big two. Deal with it. And I'm going to be turning back and forth because I've got some notes here on what I want to talk about, try and keep this brief. So now we've got that out of the way, I'm going to talk about why I haven't really talked about Mehta up until now. And basically it has to just do with timing. So as this method came into existence, I was busy with a lot of things. So around August, September, October, I was gearing up for a Speedcubing Solution launch, the final one for 2020. That obviously kept me very busy. And then very shortly after that, I was in the process of moving from the ACT to Queensland. And that took a lot out of my time as well. And then after that, come January 2021, I again got quite busy with another Speedcubing Solution launch for 2021. That kept me busy, and then after that there were some competitions, so that also kept me busy. And then right after that, around February, I just got really burnt out with cubing and I took an extended break. Didn't announce it because announcing retirement or announcing that you're quitting or announcing that you're taking a break is kind of cringe. If you're going to take a break, just do it. If you want to quit, just quit. But I think logically, if you want to step back, just step back, and if you want to come back, come back. Okay? Don't make a spectacle out of it. You're not special. Anyways, so with that, I came back around August. I had finally just found the motivation and had ideas on projects I want to work on that actually got me excited, so I came back. And with that, like my first video, I'm back. A couple people messaged me saying they want me to do a video on the Mehta method, kind of in the same vein as the ZZ video that I did a few years ago that got really popular. And I think people specifically wanted me to tear apart the method and prove that it's worse than CFOP and RU, which is originally what I tried to do. And as it turns out, when I was doing this, I was originally comparing it with RU because Mehta and RU have the same first step, 1x2x3 block. I realized that using the same debunking method that I used with ZZ, I wasn't going to be able to present a very strong argument. So I had to actually look into the method. And when I did that, I came across the original speed solving forum post from Yash Mehta. And I was very, 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 very impressed. This kid, I don't know if he's a kid, he might be my age, who knows, but regardless, this guy, he knows his stuff. When I read his philosophy, and in particular, like, he knows CFOP and what makes CFOP the best, like, method, like, bang for your buck type thing. Like, he gets that, and he's able to explain it very clearly in his own way. And it's not necessarily how I would explain it, but when I was reading it, I was like, yep, I agree with this, I agree with that. Okay, this guy clearly knows what he's talking about. And the fact that he was able to preface that before bringing this method forward already gave me a lot more confidence compared to all the other crap Reddit methods that have come before it, which have mostly been the result of some young cuber who wants to get their name out there. They want to be famous, they want to go down in the history books. Woo! So yeah, obviously, like, for a long time I've just kind of been jaded with new methods. I'm just like, I don't care, it sucks, it probably sucks. I could prove it, but I'm just not interested. But people have been wanting Mehta specifically, wanting me to talk about this method specifically, and I think it's for good reason, because I'm not the first notable cuber who's actually publicly stated that they think this method has some real merit. I believe Ishan Agarwal, Tao Yu, and I think some others as well have said some really positive things about the method. So yeah, bottom line, I'm not making a video on why Mehta is objectively worse than CFOP, because I actually don't think it's objectively worse. I actually think it has, and I know this is a buzzword, potential. I think it's got potential. So there you go. I think it has potential, however I do want to kind of state, after a few days of playing with the method, not really doing speed solves, but just like doing example solves, thinking about the recognition, thinking about how steps get done intuitively. Most of the method gets dealt with algorithms, but the steps that are intuitive, I was thinking very heavily on that. And I have kind of my two drawbacks, quote unquote, of the method that I think people should know about and discuss. The first one is the barrier to entry. Well, that's not really the first one, that's kind of like the overarching theme, which I'll talk about in a bit. But the first one is to do with inspection. The barrier to entry for inspection is a lot higher than with CFOP, and to a lesser extent RU. The way I see, like, the big two of CFOP and RU, I feel like they can both be really fast. However, I think CFOP has a much lower barrier to entry for a few reasons, which I'll get into later. And one of those is inspection. Inspecting across, I think, is easier than inspecting a RU block. So for that reason, I think the barrier to entry is quite difficult on that front. And then on top of that, continuing with the RU solve, I think doing a second block on the fly is a lot easier. Well, maybe not a lot easier, but I think the barrier to entry to that is easier than with doing the 3/4 belt step. I don't know if that's actually necessarily true, but bottom line, you need to come correct with your inspection. Like, if you're a RU solver and you don't plan any of your second block, you can kind of get away with it, but if you don't plan any of your 3/4 belt for the meta method, you're going to struggle a lot more. So that's kind of the first drawback. Bottom line, if you're going to give this method a serious shot, you need to be prepared to practice your inspection more than most people would like to, because it is very mentally taxing and it is not the most fun and engaging thing to do. So that's like the first drawback, quote unquote. It's not really a drawback, it's just like, hey, this is the reality. If you want to push this method to what it could potentially achieve, you do need to come correct with your inspection. Drawback number 2, and I'm going to swivel over a bit because this relates to stuff that I can actually show on a cube. It's to do with the 3/4 belt step itself. And before I talk about that, I'm going to tell a little story about the first ever Reddit AMA I did for the RCube subreddit. There's 2 AMAs there. I think the first one I did was in 2015. And one of the questions I got was thoughts on cross on left. And I basically explained why, even in 2015, I thought cross on left was very clearly worse than cross on bottom. So, when you've got a cross solved, I'm doing red, deal with it. I'm color neutral, damn it. So, with F2L, when you got your cross on bottom, you basically got 2 important layers. Your wrist turns with R and L, and then the U layer, which gets dealt with your index fingers. You can do all sorts of stuff. You can do pinch turns in certain grips, you can even do like drag turns. Point being, this layer here demands you to be flexible. And between your two tools of wrist turns and index flicks of various kinds, I think index flicks do a much better job of dealing with the intricacies and pseudo-randomness of the U layer. With cross on left, you switch the roles. You're doing this easy back and forth stuff with your index fingers, but now these hands that normally do wrist turns have to deal with the barrage of kind of random, like in-between turns basically. Because every F12 case, if you boil it down far enough, it's like move a side up, do some stuff with the U layer, move that side down. Sometimes there's cancellations involved, but that's kind of what it all boils down to. So like that's basically why for a time when hardware was a lot worse and doing fancier U-layer finger tricks wasn't as viable, cross on left saw a lot more success. I believe notably Philip Espinosa was one of the leading people doing good things with cross on left up until like the very end. He was kind of the last one. But as hardware got better and better, cross on bottom got better and better. And cross on left, by extension, got worse and worse. So what does this have to do with Mehta? Well, it has a similar thing going on with the 3/4 belt step, but with some caveats. So for one, with cross on left, you're solving 8 pieces. You're solving 4 corners and 4 edges. So that's a lot of pieces you have to solve in this kind of compromised, unideal state. With Mehta, you're only solving 3 E-layer edges, so 3 pieces. So naturally, it's not as bad. On top of that, you do have freedom to use certain tricks. Notably, you can use like SR, S prime type tricks to get edges in. You could also potentially do like fat F prime U, fat F type stuff as well. I think that's a lot less popular though. Bottom line, there's a lot more freedom just due to the having less pieces, well not having less pieces solved, but having an extra like free layer to do stuff. Because if you pretend there's like a 1x2x3 here, you have these layers that you can turn without disturbing the block, whereas if you have a cross, there's only one layer you can turn without disturbing the first thing you solved. So that added freedom helps a lot. And on top of that, again going back to the first thing, the fact that you can, if you come correct with your inspection, you can deal with a lot of those problems by solving 1 or 2 or even 3 of the E-layer edges in inspection. But still, that is another kind of barrier to entry with the method, I feel, and that's why I think it is a very hard, difficult method to master. And then another thing you'd probably have to learn too is like doing weird stuff, and you'd have to be really good, or not really good, but really disciplined with like doing turns with one hand and setting up your other hand to be in the correct position for the next moves you're going to do. Kind of the idea of like hiding your rear grips, I've talked about that a bit in past videos and emails, and that overarching principle I think applies to a decent extent with the 3/4 belt step. But those are the only 2 intuitive steps of Mehta. So other than that, I think it is a great method. The last thing I will say is there's 2 main variants of the Mehta like base method. So there's doing 6 CO, 6 CP, and then last 5 edges. So 6 CO is just orienting all your corners, 6 CP is just permuting all your corners, and then last 5 edges is last 5 edges, you just do an alg. The other way you can do it is after you get the 2x2x3 with EO done plus the E-slice, which is called EO ledge, I believe. Another way you can do it is you just solve the 2 corners that go here. So you basically get your F12 solved minus this DR edge potentially, and then you have what's called CDRLL. You're basically just doing a CLL alg. So like the CFOP equivalent would be like OLL-CP or COLL. For RU it's CMLL, and for Mehta we call it, or they call it CDRLL. And I think that second path to getting to last 5 edges is better. And I'm going to try and set up an example as to why. I think overall the recognition is just a lot better because the way the steps get divided up ends up being nicer on the recognition. It's easier to do the 2 edges down, the 2 corners down here than it is to orient all 6. Same with like CP versus CLL, and then the last step is the same. The other reason I think it's really good is because you can introduce a very simple but very effective option select. And this is something I have actually suggested to like the main people developing the method. And the idea is basically, if it's practical, do so, and if the recognition is staring you in the face, when you do your CDR/LL alg, you also solve one edge along with it. And with that, instead of getting L5E, you get L4E, or you have a better chance of getting L3E. And I am making the assumption that L3E is much more desirable than like L5E, and the same for L4E to L5E to a slightly lesser extent. So there is a bit of an assumption there, and there are some kind of parallels you can draw between like how OLLCP gets applied in CFOP. But the idea I have is basically, when you're recognizing CLL, if you happen to see either a matching block, so like this, or this, or this, and you know that if you do a specific alg, that it is going to lead to a solved edge, then you can do that. And I think you could also incorporate that with opposite colors as well. So something like this could count as a block. You could recognize that you see this without seeing anything else other than the CLL and that doing assumed will solve that one edge. And with a lot of CLL cases, not every single one, but you will have an alternative alg that will preserve different blocks. Like, so for this one, if you have either a block here, or a block here, then you can do this version of soon to guarantee a solved edge. I think that is a very practical option select to introduce. It's kind of similar to how ROLL and JOLL get used in 3x3 CFOP last layer solutions. If you see it and it's staring you in the face, then you can't really miss it and you're going to get additional info going into PLL. And then if you don't see it, then it's no big deal. You're still just getting PLL and there's only 21 cases and it's not a huge deal. So that is the other main reason why I think that should be the base meta method, and I think people who want to push the method seriously should move away from 6CO, 6CP, L5E. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say, because I don't think there is a reasonable option select you can introduce for the original base meta method. And this isn't anything new. I have talked to people in the meta Discord, and most people do agree that what I am saying is true. And they even thought that before I introduced that idea. They just thought that because, you know, the recognition for solving these two corners is a lot easier, the recognition for CLL is a lot easier, etc., etc. So to conclude, if you are a small child who loves going on reddit.com and you are sick and tired of wanting to use CFOP and RU, you want to be cool, you're special, you are a unicorn. You want to stand out from the crowd. You want to impress your friends who really just don't give a crap. Switch to Meta. Meta will make you cool and unique, and your friends will think you are very cool and unique. And on top of that, you are actually using a method that I genuinely, wholeheartedly think could be in the same tier as CFOP and RU for two-handed speed solving. I don't know about one-handed, I have my doubts, but for two-handed 3x3, the flagship event, I think it could very well be in the same tier. Now, with that, the last thing I will say is, again, if we assume that one day the big three become CFOP, RU, and I nearly said ZZ. Freudian slip. CFOP, RU, and Meta. If those become the big three, which I think there is a strong case for that to be the case, what a sentence. Keep in mind that as far as like the barrier to entry is concerned, I think Meta has the highest barrier to entry, RU is somewhere in the middle, and then CFOP has the easiest barrier to entry, because as very simple steps, you don't really need to know the intricacies of like mastering solving a cube to see really great success with CFOP. But with Meta, you do have to come correct with your inspection. You need to understand finger tricks and regrip stuff. And then RU is just kind of in the middle. Has like more resources than Meta, but less than CFOP. And also like similar stuff going on with not necessarily needing to like know every detail. But you do need to know some if you want to see actual success. So that's it, that's the video. I think Meta is The first method I've seen proposed for 3x3 two-handed speed solving, and keep in mind I've been cubing since May 2011, I've been very active in the community for that whole period with only partial breaks here and there. I think the break I took recently was actually like the longest real break I've ever taken from cubing, so keep that in mind. I've seen many methods get proposed. And I think Mehta is the first method that I have seen proposed for 3x3 two-handed speed solving that actually has potential to be in the same tier as CFOB and Root. Thanks for watching.